Okay, Linda, we're actually live.
Okay. Can you guys hear me? And can you guys see me?
Yeah,
Okay, because my
yeah, but
network
I
has
think
been
there's like network issue.
really awful. I'm just trying to figure that out. But I guess I should not keep everyone waiting while I sort that out on my own side of Nigeria. So thank you everyone for coming on. Sorry for the delay. We're trying to sort out and set up and make sure that we could share on YouTube. Thank you so much for your patience. So today we have Kati here with us, and he's going to be building a cryptocurrency tracker. And I think like that's a very awesome thing to build. Like you have news of cryptocurrency everywhere. Every time Bitcoin is doing something new, and also Vue is also like we just had Vue 3 recently released, and a lot of things are going on. So I think this is a good merge of like this is a very good thing to build in this present time, everything that is going on. So Kachi is going to show you like from the very start down to um, deployment. And yeah, so as you can see, Kachi said he has his Koda hoodie on. And you know that when you see someone with a hoodie, that means that he's a TEDx developer. But yeah, so Kachi, I'm just going to hand over the stage to you and you can take us off since we've already spent some time setting up. I know that there will be a lot of questions from our attendees. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
can hear you clearly.
you can.
Okay, awesome. So, hey everyone, thank you guys so much for coming. I'm hoping this is some sort of, calm, friendly conversation. I am very excited to have you guys here. If you've never worked with Vue before, or if you've worked with Vue a very long time ago, or if you just want to have some fun and build something interesting, then I think you would love sticking around. So we're going to build a cryptocurrency tracker. And that's not really going to be the focus. We are going to focus on, Vue.js and how you would solve certain popular problems with Vue.js and how easy it is to build all sorts of applications with Vue.js. Basically talking about all things awesome Vue.js, right? So first I set up a template that we are going to use so that we can get started. But before that, I want to show you how you would create a Vue application from scratch by yourself if you were supposed to start out with Vue. And I think it's really one of the most amazing parts of the Vue community. So I'm just going to show you. First, I would start by sharing my screen. Just going to share my entire screen. Can you guys see my editor?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, so I'm just gonna expand this. I don't know if it's visible to everyone. Is it?
Yeah.
So first of all, there's a Vue CLI, which is a command line app that helps you generate new Vue.js applications. And you can install that with npm install global at vue/CLI. And this would install the CLI globally for you. That way you can generate Vue applications really fast. So in this case, if we wanted to create a new application, we would say Vue create and then pass the name of the application. So let's just say crypto tracker, for example. And what this would do is it's going to generate a new Vue application. And I'm using version 4 of the CLI. So if you're using the same version, then you shouldn't see anything, strange. So first of all, you need to pick a preset, and the you can get started with the basics, which is just Babel and ESLint, or you can select your own features if you're interested. And this is just going to generate a project for you, and that's it. So that's all it takes for you to generate a new project with Vue. So I generated a new project, and with this project, I went ahead and set up Tailwind CSS just so that we have some basic styles. And I also set up some HTML. So I want to show you what I have so far so that you can, be acquainted with what we have before you get started. just going to delete this new app that was being generated. So first of all, Vue generates this main.js file, which is really the entry point into the application. And it creates a new Vue application, as we can see. And remember that with front-end frameworks, we have a composition of components, and then all of these components come together to build our web page, right? So in this case, for every Vue application, you need sort of a root component, which is where your application is going to exist. So we have an app component here, app.vue, and that's the component where all of our project lives. Now we render that component with a new Vue instance, and we mount it on hashtag app, which means element with an ID of app. Now this main.js file is going to be connected into the index.html file, which is the actual HTML that is we are going to see. So I'm just going to start the app here. So once you generate a new project, you can just run yarn serve, and yarn serve is going to start the application development server for you. So in this case, I'm using Tailwind CSS. So it's first of all going to build the CSS so that we can have styles. Then it's going to start the development server. Now, if you want to follow along and actually get this starter template that I have with CSS and the default page, what it's going to do, what you need to do is visit github.com/badcoder/coin doctor. And I think that's the correct URL. Yes, that's the URL. So this is going to give you the starter template, and you just need to do a yarn install, a yarn serve, and that's it. So this is what we have for the starter, and basically it's just a table. And our main aim is to call an API, fetch data from that API, and then use that to populate the values that we see in this table. And we'll also use that data to decide if the price is going up or down, if it's supposed to be green or red, and would thereby learn a lot of things about Vue.js and exactly how to use those features. So I'm just going to come back to my terminal. And if you back to the app, if we view the page source, you would notice that the HTML that we have here is the HTML that is in this index.html file. So it's a nice place to link things such as here we are linking to WinCSS. You can also link in inter.css, which is a font. If in case you had a Google Fonts, this would be a good place to put it. So at the end of the day, Vue.js is just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We have an HTML file, then we have a CSS link where we are linking our CSS, and then we have the JavaScript part, which is going to be in the main.js file. Now that main.js file, because we're using Vue.js, it's going to use Webpack behind the scenes to inject that JavaScript right here. That's why it says it's going to be auto-injected. So first, let's go to our main. Remember, we have our main component, which is the app, and it's mounted on the new Vue instance. And then in the app.vue, we can see our HTML, where this is all coming from, this one right here. So you can see you just have a pair of template tags, and then in there you have some divs, some classes, and things like that. Now, this is where you're going to present your app, right? And remember, the app is going to be made up of many components, and a component is basically a breakdown of our page into smaller, more understandable pieces. So we have a main component, which is app.vue. And if we swipe to the right, you would see that this is what that HTML generates for us. So the first thing you would do is obviously take the design of your application and convert it into HTML, which we've already done in this case. That's why you can see the HTML. And then the next thing you do in any Vue application you're building is to break down this HTML into understandable components. For example, looking at the project right now, I would say that we have maybe 2 or 3 components that we can break down. First, I would say the navigation bar should be a component because it's one thing on its own, and also we can reuse it on multiple pages. So I would extract the navigation bar into a new component. So how would we create a component in Vue.js? We just need to create a .vue file. So I would say navbar.vue is going to be our component, and then the HTML for the component is going to be in these template tags. So I would come back to the app.vue, and I need to find exactly where the nav bar starts, and I think this is it. So I would cut this out. and save so that we can check the browser, make sure that the navbar is gone, and it's gone. And now we would go to the navbar.view component and paste that in. All right. So now we've created a brand new component, and the component has just HTML. But now we need to use this component in another component. So we have to take the navbar and then use it in the app component. And this will show you how we can reuse the components everywhere. Now, before you use a component, you need to tell Vue, hey, this is a component I created, because now it's just floating in the wind. But you need to tell Vue, hey, be aware of this component that I created, right? So to do that, there are two things that you have to keep in mind. You need to tell Vue, hey, this component is a global component, so you can use it anywhere, or this component is a local component, so it can only be used in a specific component. So we would come to the app.view because we want this navbar to only be available in the app.view component, and would create a pair of script tags, and we are going to import the navbar component from navbar.view. Next, we need to export an object by default from this script tags, and this is exporting the component JavaScript. Now in here, we can say, hey, this component has other components, and then we would register the new navbar component in the components for this app component. And now where the HTML was before, we can mount this component the way we would mount any self-closing HTML tag. And now if we go back to our app, you can see that we are back to that component. But what's the advantage in this case? In this case, in case we had another component that needs to use the navbar, this is all the code we would be writing. We don't even need to struggle with all the bunch of HTML that we copied. So now, if we wanted this component to be global, we would register it on the main.js file on the Vue instance, and then Vue would know, hey, you can use this component anywhere at any time. And we'd get to a practical example of that. All right, so that's stage one. We've been able to break down our application into one component. Let's break down one more time. So we are going to break down the table into a coins table component, or a currencies table component, which is going to be the table that houses everything for our currencies. So I would collapse this and then Command X to cut the table. And here I'm going to create a currency table, or currencies table dot view and template, and I'll paste that in. So I've pasted the table, and now we need to come to the app.view, import the component that I just created, import currencies table from currencies table.view, and now we would add that as a component here. And now where we had the table, we can just mount currencies table. And that's it. We have two components for our application. If we check back, make sure we refresh, make sure that once we make a change, and we expect that that change does not destroy anything. Okay, so we've learned how to break down our Vue applications into separate components, and that's the first step, right? So if you're following along, or if you're watching this video later, make sure that you take the app.view component, break it down into separate components. You can even further break down the components into other smaller components so that you learn how to structure your Vue applications accordingly. All right, so we've broken down the nav and the currencies. Now, the next step of this tutorial would be to fetch the currencies from the API. So we are going to use an API that provides us with some currencies data, and that currencies data is what we would use to populate the table. So first, I'm just going to open up the, let me see, I think I have the API written somewhere. Oh, okay, awesome. So this is the API. It's called coinlaw.net. And it gives us data. This is the endpoint that we are going to use, but I'm just going to open the website itself so that we see the documentation. Coinlaw.com, I think. Okay, yeah, we got it. So this is Coinlaw. It's going to give us information about the prices of current cryptocurrencies, right? And what we want to do is fetch those prices, and then we would display those prices on a table on our own website. So I'm going to open up the API endpoint, which is /API/stickers, and it's going to give us a list of all the currencies. You can see that it gives us information such as the symbol, the name, the rank, the price in USD, the price in Bitcoin, and the volume traded, and other fun things, right? So first we need to call this endpoint from our Vue application. So now the next thing for us is to decide when we want to call it. Now you can call an API point when a user takes an action, for example, clicks on fetch this, and then you fetch it. That would be you responding to a user's action, a button click or something. You can also call when something happens, maybe a user is scrolling. You can also call the API when maybe the user views a page, and that would be immediately the user visits your website. And to do this in Vue.js, we can use what we call a hook. Just gonna move this right here. And a hook, a lifecycle hook, for example, is hooking into what happens when Vue is mounting a component. So when Vue takes this component, it has to render it on the page, and that process is called mounting. So here we can say when Vue is done mounting, we'll pass a function to the Vue app right here, mounted, and this function is going to be called by Vue when it's done mounting the component. So we can say mounted if we're using ES6, and here I'm just going to console.log I am mounted. So that way we can know if this function is actually being invoked by Vue.js. So I'm just going to open up my console, and now if we check, you can see that we have I am mounted printed on the console, right? Which means that every time we refresh the page and this component is mounted by Vue, if we just give it a second to mount, then you would see I am mounted printed right there, okay? Now, something fun again that you can do in your developer tools is to install Vue. And this is the Vue DevTools extension, and it's going to be really helpful looking into your application. For example, you can see we have the root, then we have the app component that we mounted, and then the app component inside, let me just reduce the size here, has the nav bar and the currencies table. So really nice to see the tree structure of your component, and you can also see some more details which we'll talk about. All right, so this component is mounted. So what do we want to do? We want to fetch the data. So we are going to use fetch. We'll call fetch. We'll pass in the API endpoint. And when it's done fetching, we are going to get a response, and we'll pass that response to a JSON. And then when it's done passing the response to a JSON, we'll get the currencies and we'll console.log those currencies like that. So fetch the API. When you're done, pass the response from the API from a stream to a JSON, and then get the results, which would be in this data key, and you would log it. So now you can see that we have a log right here, and it gives us some data, all of the data that we saw from this point. We can see it in our terminal right now. Awesome, right? So the next thing is, how do we take this data and then we display it in the table so that Vue can, react to it? So basically what we are going to be doing is using what we call data. And that's Vue's way of saying, hey, tell us what your data is, and we would use that to generate your HTML on your page. And data is kind of fun, right? Because it gives you an opportunity to control what the user sees by controlling what data is available. So it's different from when you're doing maybe document.getElement by ID or document.createElement. Why? Because in that case, you are sort of manually manipulating the DOM, right? Manually making changes to the tree structure, the HTML structure. But with Vue, or with really any other modern front-end framework, when you have data, it's sort you instead of changing the DOM, you change the data, and then the framework is going to automatically change the DOM to reflect the data changes, right? So that's like sort of reactive, and it's really nice. That way you don't have to interact with the DOM. You just change your data and then the DOM changes, and that's what we want. So we are going to come here and we'll create a data key, which is a function, and would return an object of all possible data that this component can have. In this case, we'll say currencies is the first, and we are going to say it's an array. So we would come here and would say this.data, this.currencies. So this is referring to the current component And this data is going to be available on the current component. So this.currencies. And we are going to say this.currencies is equal to data.data. And we are saying, hey, the data that you fetched from the API, notice that it's inside a data key, assign that to this.currencies. Now, if we save that, then view our Vue.js application. So using the Vue dev tools, and we check out the component, you can see that it has data and the data has our currencies. So now you can see a list of all of our currencies right here. Okay, awesome. So we have the list of currencies that we want. The next step is to display these currencies. Now we can display them on this. We can display them in a couple of ways. In this case, we have this component, currencies table, and the currencies table is the component that is supposed to display the currencies. But now we need to give this data to the currencies table component, and then the currencies table component will know how to display it. So what we are going to do is use what we call props. Now, a prop is taking data from one component and passing it to the other, but that component must be, less or be a child of the component that holds the data. So the app.view has the data. The currencies table is a child, so we need to pass it from the parent to the child. So that's what we call passing props. And props is just like attributes in HTML. So you have attributes such as select, and then you pass in options, and those are props that you pass to the select. And you can also pass in maybe input, type text, or type number. Those are props that you pass to the HTML element to modify its behavior. So that's exactly what we are doing here. We're just creating our own custom HTML element, and then props are just an attribute. So the attribute that we're interested in is the currencies table. Let's go to the currencies table, and we are going to add some scripts, and we are going to export defaults. And in here, what we want is props, and we are going to say, hey, one of the attributes accepted by this custom HTML element or component is currencies. Okay, so now in the app.view, we are going to pass currencies to the currencies table component. Now, this is exactly how you pass in an HTML attribute. That's why I say a prop is just an HTML attribute. That's exactly what we are trying to do. You can see this is an example of an HTML attribute. You pass in the name and then equal to, and then the value, right? But in this case, we want the value to be a JavaScript value, or like a JavaScript expression. So we need to put in 2 columns in front of the currencies, and then we would pass in the name of the expression or what we want to pass in. So here we're going to say currencies. Basically, we are saying bind the currencies attribute. This column here means bind. And it's just, if I could pass in a string like this, it's going to pass in down as a string. And that's not what we want. What we want to do is pass in a JavaScript expression. And in this case, the expression is going to refer to the data key that we have right here. So if we do we can use any of the data properties in our template. We can loop through, we can display whatever we want. In this case, we are passing it down to a child. So now, if we visit our component tree and check out the currencies table, you can see that it has props, which are the attributes, and then it has all of the currencies from the app component, which has it in its data. Now that's fun, all right? So we've learned how to pass data or pass props from a parent to a child, and you do that using props. So if you visit the child component, which is the currencies table, you will notice that we have to tell Vue, hey, this component is expecting some props. And then if you visit the app.view, we need to pass it in as a normal HTML attribute. But in case it's a JavaScript expression, then we need to bind it, because here this is an expression or a display of the value from the data. In some situations, you wouldn't need to bind them when you're actually passing in just a normal value. So let's say, for example, it accepted a prop called, I don't know, dark mode. And you can just pass in yes. This is a string prop and it does not need any binding. So it's just directly passing this value. So you don't need to bind it. But now if this dark mode is coming from a value called has dark from the data, then you would have to bind it, and it would use this variable from the data. Okay, so that's just an example. So now that we've passed it, how do we use it? So we have the props. So if we come here, let's collapse this, do a little bit of formatting. So we have our table head and we have our table body. Now we can have a look at our data to see exactly what we need. So let's look at an example object. You can see that an example object would have the name, it would have the name ID, it would have the symbol, and we have 100 of those objects. So what we want to do is, for each object we have, we want a new database row for that object. And that's how we are going to generate 100 rows from 100 objects. Now, to do that, first, we are going to come to our table and identify the row or the elements that we want to replicate or duplicate. Now, if we scroll down, we would notice the table row, which is TR right here. I'm just going to collapse the other things so they're not distracting. And these are the table data points. I'm just going to indent this inward like this. And maybe I should just use the formatter. I think we have a formatter. It's just more organized when the data is, structured. So yeah, so I've run the formatter and now this is better. So in our table body, we have the table row, and the table row is what we want to duplicate for each currency that we have. So what you would do is you would come to the element that you want to duplicate and you would add a v-for attribute or directive. And this is going to say v-for, it's like a for loop. And then you want to loop through each item that you have and then do something with it or display that element or replicate that element. So we are going to say currency in currencies, and currencies here is referring to this prop called currencies. And then currency here is a looping variable. So for each currency in the currencies array that we have passed in as a prop, what do we want to do? We want to display a table row. And now if we save that, you would see that, Vue.js gives us some errors. And two things that we need to address. The first thing we have here is the table row is going to be replicated 100 times because we are looping through 100 times because we have 100 items. So Vue.js needs to know which is which because there are maybe 100 really similar items. And for Vue to be able to change a specific item at a specific time, if our data changes, it needs to know which is which. So we need to pass in a key. So to pass in a key, we are going to say key is equal to currency dot ID. But now remember, currency is referencing an object. .id is referencing a property in that object, which means we are referencing a variable and we need to use binding. So we are going to bind the key to currency.id. And now if we save, great. So you can see we have a whole table, even though it's exactly the same table, but there are 100 of them. And that's nice. So next, what do we want to do? We need to use this currency variable to display the data on the table. So we are going to say the currency is going to be currency.name. And these properties I know because we've gone through the data that is actually being passed to the currencies table. You can see we have an array of currencies and then each has a name. It also has an ID. It also has a symbol. So here we are going to have the name and here we are going to have the symbol. Like that. And I'll save. That should change. Come on. Okay, let me just try refreshing. Okay, awesome. So now you can see Bitcoin, you can see the symbol for Bitcoin, you can see Ethereum, the symbol for Ethereum, Cardano, the symbol for Cardano, and Cardano is awesome. It's third place for those who know what I'm talking about. Yeah, so we also have all the rest, the whole list, all right? So that's how we can display data. And this thing that I just did right here is called interpolation. is it? I can't remember the name, but it's basically displaying a value. So we are saying, hey, this value, this JavaScript expression, just print it out here as text. And that's what we're doing. All right. So what we want to do next is to take care of the avatar, because right now the avatar is stagnant. So what we're going to do is use a package. If you check the package.json, there is a package installed called Vue crypto icon. And it basically has a bunch of icons for different currencies or different cryptocurrencies. I'm just going to load that so that we can have a look at the documentation. And I think it's a good opportunity to see how packages work in the Vue world. So here we have a package, and they say they provide a bunch of icons. And what they do is each of these icons is a component, right? And you can just pick that component and mount it, and then it will display the icon. All right. So basically you have to install, which I've done behind the scenes to save us some time. And secondly, you need to register that icon. Remember that we've done icon registration, component registration locally. So this is how you would register a component locally. But now we want to learn how to register a component globally so we can use it from anywhere in the application, from any component in the application. So to do that, we are going to come to our main.js. And these are the instructions. The first thing we need to do is import the newly installed package or the newly installed component. All right. And then the next thing we need to do is import the icons themselves. So we would import the icons. All right. And then the final thing we need to do is add those icons to the component so that the component would know to use the icons. And this is somehow unique because we have probably 6,000 icons. You might not want to use 6,000 icons. You can just pick one icon that you want and then use it. All right. And finally, we need to tell Vue that this is a component. So to do that, we would say Vue.use and we'll pass in the name of the component. And that's it. So how do you register a component so that it's globally available with Vue? You just say Vue.use, then the name of the component or the component itself. All right. So Vue.use, you pass the component, and that's it. We can use this component from anywhere. Okay. So now let's go down to the usage. How do we use this component? You can see that we can mount the component like this, and then it would display based on the symbol. So we would come to the currencies table, and in place of the image, we are going to pass in the crypto icon right there. Now, notice that in the currencies table, we didn't register that component, but we'll just use it because we've registered it globally. Okay, so now if we check this out, it looks like we have a smaller icon, and that's nice because we have replaced that image with our component. So probably we should bump this to 32 for a larger icon. And I think that's good. But now we need to make the symbol dynamic. Now, remember what I said, there's binding and then there's just passing an attribute. So this attribute or this prop is just being passed to be BTC, and that's why it's constant. But now we want to make it dynamic based on the currency. So first thing we do is bind, and we'll pass in the variable dot symbol like that. And now if we save, great. You can see that we have a bunch of icons right there for each currency that we have available. Awesome, right? I'm not sure if we still have time. Okay, we do. So yeah, so that's the bunch of icons that we have, and some of them are not available. That's why it throws an error. So probably the library has to be updated. But yeah, so look at that. We have the first data point already resolved. So the name, the symbol, and the icon. Look at that. Looking nice, right? So the next thing which I think would be really fun to learn is the, for example, the price. How would you handle the price in a Vue application? Notice that our API, if we check out the data coming from the API, currencies table, currency, let's check out one of the currencies. You will notice that what we want is the price in USD. That's it. But this is how it is. It's not formatted in any way. It's just a number. So what we can do is we can go to the app, and that's the app.vue. And instead of setting the data like this, we can map through the data. So we'd say when we map, we'd get each currency, and would return an object where would spread the currency and would add the price. And the price now is going to be a formatted version of the currency. So we can say currency.price USD, but we need to format this currency price. But now let's just confirm that if we map, we actually have the price. So if we come to the currencies table, check out the first object, you can see that we have the price value right there. And check out the second or the eighth, we have the price. That's awesome. So we need to format this. So in this case, what we can do is we can create a helpful method, a function. And this is done by adding a methods object to the Vue instance, which is here, or the component instance. And we can create a method called format_USD. And this method is going to receive a value, and its responsibility is to format it in US dollars. So now we can use the new intl.number standard. And I'm not sure exactly what the syntax is. So I'm just going to open up intl number format. It's already bookmarked on my computer because I keep forgetting, right? So let's check it out. So this is the syntax. Maybe we scroll down to USD. Yep, that's what we want. So we pass in new intl.number format and not number. And the next argument is the local, which is English US, ENUS. Then the next is some options. We need the style to be a currency styling. So style is currency. And then we also need the currency to be USD. Okay, so now we also need to call the format function and pass in the value. So we'll pass the format and we'll pass in the value. And now this function should receive a value and then format it in USD. So now where do we use this? We'll call this dot format USD and pass in the currency price USD. And now if we visit the component, we can check out the currencies table, view the props, and make sure that the price is formatted, and it is. That's nice. So final step, display that price right here. So I'm just going to come to the data. This is it right here. And now we can just do a currency dot price. Save that. And this should change. Let's give it a refresh. It makes that API call. And great. That is it. We have the prices for each of those currencies in USD. And that's great. So there's still so much to learn. For example, to determine if it should be red or green or the icon to use, same for the 24 hours period and for the 7 days period, and display the market cap, to also display a link to view this on CoinMarketCap. So there's still a lot, but I think that everything we've learned so far can actually guide you on how to do it. So I'm just going to jump, excuse me, because of time, I'm just going to jump straight to deploying this to Netlify, and you would see how easy it is to move from building something on your local computer to making it live for everyone to see and enjoy. So the first thing I'm going to do is save my work. So I have a bunch of changes here. I'm just going to git add everything and git commit message, and I'll just give it a message of display price, name, symbol, and image on table. Okay, so I've committed my changes, and now I'm going to git push origin master. So I commit my changes and then I push to my GitHub repository. It gives me a link to my repository, which I can visit to confirm that the updates have been made. And now you can see the latest commit was 15 seconds ago, so I'm good to go. So now for us to just deploy to Netlify, first I'm going to open up netlify.com, and they're really generous. There's a really nice free plan. So you just need to go ahead and log in. And if you don't have an account, you can just create an account with Netlify. And basically the whole point is to take your project and then make it live. So first thing you need to do is create a new site from Git, and your dashboard will probably not be as complicated as mine because I have a lot of field projects. So I would say new site from Git, and I would click on GitHub so that it connects to my GitHub account, gets access so that it can display to me all of my repositories. So in this case, I would search for Coin Doctor, hit enter, and it should show up that repository that we just worked on. This is it. So now it's going to display to me the branch that I want to deploy. In this case, I want to deploy the master branch. Next, it's going to ask me the deployment settings. So first of all, let's come back to the terminal. And if we check out the package, the JSON, you would notice that the serve command starts the application. The build command builds the application ready for production. So I highly recommend always running yarn build before you push so that you make sure that the application is still building correctly and you did not do something, right? So I'm running yarn build right now. It's building my CSS, and then it's building the Vue.js app for production. You can see that Tailwind is awesome. It built it down to a size of 16 kilobytes for all the CSS that I wrote. And that's really amazing. And I realized that the more you write, the less that bundle becomes, which is amazing. So now we have a build, and now you can check out your directory structure to see what was built. You notice that it's a dist folder with your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So that's how you get to know what to put in here. So Netlify is already smart enough to know that it's a Vue app and know that the command to build is yarn build, and the command or the result of the build, which we have to deploy, is in a dist folder. So you just run the build so you can confirm, right? And now you can just click deploy site, and that's it. So let's hold on for the deployment. First, it generates a random name for your application, which is Happy Runman E7438, whatever. And then the site deployment is in progress. So you can click on that to see exactly what a deployment looks like. So this is deploying the master head branch. And then if you go into the deployment logs, the first thing it does is it pulls in your repository. So, okay, first of all, it installs yarn because your project is using yarn, and it would know by checking if it's a yarn.log or a package log.json. So then after installing yarn, it would need to install your project dependencies. So let me see. I think it's doing that at the moment. Yes. Okay, so it's done that. So now it's running the build command, which is here. So you can see yarn build, which is yarn build CSS and Vue CLI service build. So now it's done building the CSS, and then it's building the Vue app for production. So it's just going to run the same commands that we run locally. And once it's done, it's going to deploy the site and then cache it. And that's it. The site is live. So we're just going to go to preview deploy. And yeah, that's the app. It's live. It's live. Yeah, it's on Netlify. It's live. People can actually use this application right now to know the current price of cryptocurrencies in the market. So let's go back and just want to show you a little setting that you'll probably be interested in. You probably want to rename your site. So you should come to domain management, I think, and then options, edit site name. And here I'm just going to call this Coin Doctor and then save the name. And now if I visit coindoctor.netlify.app, that's it. As easy as that. Now our application is live, and you can actually see your application live in a few seconds just after building locally. So I think that's awesome. So we've learned a ton in this tutorial, but I'm just going to close by giving you an assignment, which I think would help you learn more about Vue. Clone the repository that we've worked on, which is here, badcoder/coindoctor on GitHub. Next, you want to implement the feature where we display the 24-hour price, the 7-day price, and also use the format USD function to format those. Then also display the market cap, and then also display a link to view the currency on Coin Market Cap. So if you check out Coin Market Cap, you will notice that each currency has its own page. So like where you can see more details about that currency. So basically it's currencies / then the symbol ID or the name ID of the currency. So what you want to do is dynamically generate the link here, and when the user clicks, it brings them to this page. Okay, so that's it. I think that's a lot of fun. In case you're crazy and you want to go a step further, then you can definitely go ahead and do some pagination on this, because displaying 100 items might be jaggy for some computers. So, but yeah, so I think that was fun, and I hope you learned a ton from this workshop. Thank you guys for sticking around.
Thank you, Kathy. I really think like that was you did a great job to pack so much in just an hour. Like that was so cool. And it's live. You have the repo. You give them an assignment. I think this is really cool. I'm looking forward to it. Like if you're able to finish up and do what Kathy says, reach out to us. We might have something for you. So some people are asking, someone said they joined late and they're asking if it's being recorded. So we're streaming to YouTube right now. And it's live on YouTube. And YouTube is also automatically recording this. So immediately the meeting is done, you're going to have access to this tutorial and you can rewatch it again and again. Kati, Amy, what do you think of the cryptocurrency tracker? I think it's something anybody can use, when you can just check and see, oh, wow, Bitcoin is at 60K, 70K, and then next thing you see 20K,
Seriously.
you're like, God forbid.
Kathy, thank you so much. This is actually I'm on the Netlify, the coin.netlify app, and I'm seeing the whole stuff. And yeah, I think everyone should actually build this. Like, if you're interested, you should like work on it from scratch with the tutorials and see what comes. We'll be giving out something to people who actually display what they did after the event. Yeah.
Yes. So I was
And
someone was
we have
asking,
network issues.
I think there's a lag. I'm not sure if you're speaking to me, Amy, but I'll just go on. So I think Kathy, someone was asking about Tailwind CSS. Let me scroll back. I asked them to put it in their
And
in
no,
the
it's not default. I've seen the
yeah.
question. It it doesn't come by default, but it's really easy to set up.
Yeah. But like I think like the thing with CSS, I like the fact that you skipped the CSS part because if you had to like start writing the whole CSS all over again, CSS can really act funny and you actually spend more time than you expected teaching how to use CSS. So it's good that you just skip the CSS part because CSS is CSS and you can that's not really the focus of this tutorial.
Mhm.
But it's really Tailwind CSS kind of like really helps you to avoid all the annoying parts of CSS. So if you'll still face some things, but at least it simplifies it a little and it really works well with components. So
Yeah.
if you haven't, okay, I'm seeing some questions in the Q&A. Um, Umi is asking, when we do attempt to build this, how do we send it to you guys? Okay, so you can send it to us via Twitter. You can send it to us via Twitter. We are very active on Twitter. You can send it to our DM. You can send it to any of us. We're also active on Twitter. Like, you can send it to me at Linda Ojo underscore, or you can send it to Kati at Badcoda, or you can send it to Amachi at Amachi. Wait, Amachi, Amici. Yes, you can send it to her there. So you can send it to any of us and we'll get back to you. An anonymous attendee said, I asked about the ID font, not really constructive, but I would like to know. And it's fine that you asked about it. Like, having a fun ID is also part of the whole coding experience, something you're comfortable with and can read. So, Kachi, what the font that you're using for your ID, did it like come with the theme? If so, then
Uh,
what theme are you using?
the fonts I use is Dank Mono, and it's very expensive. But if you're in Nigeria, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, the font I use is Dank Mono, and that's for the editor. But for the terminal, I use Cascadia Code, which is by Microsoft, and it's also awesome, and it's completely free. And I'm using Slack theme for my VS Code for it to have that Slack-ish nature.
Okay, I hope you got that.
Yeah. I think I
Um,
saw a question. Oh yeah, go on.
okay, so next question from Kelechi. He's asking, isn't it better to use that fetch API in created method rather than mounted?
Um, to be very honest, when you're using both, you almost do not feel the difference. But created, I think created is called before mounted because created is when the component is created, but it hasn't yet rendered to the page. And then mounted is when it has
Mm.
rendered to the page and everything is fine, and then it would invoke the fetch. I always prefer doing it in the mounted so that I can control what happens. So I can have a loading state, for example, but fetching data before the component has actually rendered on the page is still totally fine, right? In a real application, I would just use mounted because it gives me more control, and I know that's the last thing that Vue.js has to do, and then I'm taking it over from there. But I've not really experienced any bugs by using created. You just really need to know exactly when is happening. For example, in the created hook, if you try to set some data and display on the page, it might crash depending on what you're doing because it's not yet ready. But in the mounted, you're sure that Vue is done doing its job. So whichever works best for you, I don't think it's really something that there's one that is better than the other, just how much control you want over the situation.
Yeah, I totally agree. And sometimes with created, there might be some data that you'd want to kind of manipulate that you won't be able to do in the created lifecycle hook. So during placing and the fact that after we got the currencies, we're also kind of manipulating the prices. I think it was safe that we did everything in mounted.
Yeah, you're
So
right. I just also remembered that if you're using the router, I don't think the route params are available in created. So yeah, I think that also reminds me some things are not available in created.
yeah. So that was the last question.
Somebody
And I'm not
asked
on
me
the
about
YouTube live.
developer tools, so I can see the question.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's in the chat.
Yeah, to
Okay,
improve
let
my
me.
developer experience. Do you see it? It's from Tristan.
Yes. Okay. Hello. Thanks for the presentation. What other tools or packages do you use to improve your developer experience?
First of all, my developer experience is very it highly relies on my environment. First of all, I have a hoodie, so I'm 10x. I also have JBL speakers, so I'm 10x. I'm listening to really loud bass music. All of that around me kind of makes me very comfortable, so I can write code and feel happy. And on my computer I use a Mac so that I don't have to worry with my terminal, but when I have serious like strong work that needs performance, I use my Windows. On my editor I can spend 20 minutes choosing my theme so that I have a better working experience. And I use VS Code, so that's one of the things that actually improves my developer experience very much. And I use the integrated terminal in VS Code. um about my other tools, there's a ton. Spotify for music definitely increases my developer experience. I think it's really awesome. So basically, these small things that you have around you, but you don't notice that they're around you, that you actually enjoy, kind of, it just contributes to having a better experience. Netlify definitely is something I use for my deployments so that I don't have to worry. If I'm working with a database or server, I use render.com for my server. I use Heroku if it's free, but if I'm going to production, I use render.com. It's just so easy and so smooth. And if I'm deploying a database or something like that, if it's MongoDB, I use mongodb.com. So easy to deploy. So I just find the easiest and the smoothest thing to use so that I don't have to worry at all. Yeah, so you can definitely hit me up on Twitter if you want us to talk more. But that's kind of like a run through of my mentality and how I, get to enjoy my experience.
Okay, that was a detailed question. So, um, Tristan followed up and he was like, he was talking about tools like packages like Tailwind CSS. Why you?
Okay. Yeah, I used to CSS for styling. It's amazing. I also use Next.js. If I'm building any app, I can't remember the last time I used Preview app. Next.js just provides a faster developer experience, smoother, easier to deploy everything. Next Nox.js. Next.js is when I'm doing React. Nox.js when I'm doing Vue. It's really amazing. Um, yeah, he said next or Nox when I'm using Vue and next when I'm using React. Tailwind CSS is definitely my go-to framework. I also have Tailwind UI. If you have a license, you can use it. It really makes it easy. That's how I was able to get the design for this app as fast as possible. Um, yeah, so but I think you should definitely shoot me a message on Twitter if you want to chat more so that I don't get to tell you things like render.com that you're not interested in. But yeah, thank you so much for your question.
Okay. Uh, I think if anyone has any other question, you can quickly share it. But I think you've done a pretty good job at answering all the questions, Katin. Um, so nobody's going to ask me about my skincare routine. Okay. I guess that's not the main focus of this meetup. No problem. um, okay. That said, how to apply to be a speaker. Okay. You should follow us on Twitter. I think Twitter is our major form of communication. And whenever we have meetups, we're always putting out tweets and saying, oh, we want someone that can speak about a certain topic and you can apply. But I guess we can also do better on our own side by making sure we're sharing platforms. In case you don't know, we also have a Slack platform. And we have a link tree, which is also on our Twitter, that has links to everything, like all of our platforms, like Slack, our YouTube, and Medium and everything. So you can join us on those platforms. And we're also going to be sharing on our Slack channel saying, hey, we're preparing for the next meetup. Do you have something cool you want to share? And even you don't even have to wait for us to kind of like announce something. If you have something that you want to share with the community, you can always reach out to us, and we can talk about it and plan around that. We have another question. Okay, yeah, I think that's okay. That's a question about how to apply to be a speaker. Um, yeah, so this is a Vue.js meetup community, and we are open to feedback. And you can always reach out to any one of us to ask questions and to even pitch ideas or anything. If you feel there's something that is lacking that we should do, feel free to let us know. Okay. So I think we're pretty much done. I'm really looking forward to the next meetup. I'm sure it's going to be very fun. I don't want to spill anything,
Mhm.
but it's going to be great.
Guys, so much for coming. Really appreciate you guys.
Yeah, someone says maybe sometime you guys should do something about the composition API. Yeah, most definitely. That's going to be coming up in because a lot of things like it's kind of different from if you're coming from Vue 2, things have kind of changed, like the way they handle data and the way that they handle watchers and all of that, or even measures. So yeah, most definitely we're going to do something on composition API to make sure that we're up to date with everything and we're not teaching you guys something that is already becoming obsolete. All right. So thank you so much everyone for coming. We're going to see you guys next month. Thank you so much, Kati, for sharing your knowledge with everyone. Thank you for teaching us so well. We really learned so much. Thank you, Amy, for being here. Thank you, Jesus, for giving us life. Thank you, everyone. See you guys next month. Bye.
You can stop
So we
streaming
can
to YouTube
stop.
now.
Yeah. Um, I think it was Ben that started it, right? Maybe if we all leave the call, it would just end.